Yes.
All right, I want to call the meeting to order. Let's do a pledge of allegiance. Mr. Worley, will you lead us in the pledge of allegiance?
After you turn off the phone. Ready? Salute. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's amazing what good acoustics can do for a Fresno County supervisor.
Oh, yeah, especially one that can project their voice without the microphone. Roll call, please.
Director Borges. Director Crocker.
Here.
Director Magsig.
Here.
Director Mendez.
Here.
Director Pacheco.
Here.
Director Vanderpool.
Present.
Director Worthley.
Present.
Next is approval of agenda.
I would move for approval, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Get a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And do we need a motion to go into closed session? That's the next.
No,
So-
no motion is necessary.
Okay, we'll go to closed session then.
First step is you need to change your investment strategy. And then where you need dice.
Well, you got $250 million you can use pretty quickly.
Just don't put it where it's 0.8%.
Okay, the acoustics are good either way.
Put it into fixed income strategies.
CDs are
Leaf.
great.
Commodities, all commodities.
Hey, our commodities did well last year.
Yeah, so did ours, but that's like the first time in 7 years.
First time in 7 years, yeah.
Our retirement administrator came from Orange County, so he wants to do some derivatives.
There you go. It works for a while.
What happened to our players?
They found the restroom, I think.
Did they? I thought they just found your office.
Maybe they're taking a nap.
Yeah, and one of my supervisors is on that too. So. December is the.
Aren't you vice chair now, Kyler?
Don't remind me.
You or is it me? Go ahead and keep it going.
Keep what going?
Keep going. Here's Buddy.
I'm not in
Wake up
any
from a
hurry.
little cat nap.
What's that? Had to go to the bathroom.
It happens. And those are luxurious too.
We're very frugal. Okay, so we're back in session. So there's nothing to report, right?
Correct.
So now we'll move to item 6, which is public comment on anything not on the agenda. Hearing none, we'll move to item 7, approval of the minutes.
Motion approved.
Got a motion by Steve?
I'll second it.
A second. All in favor, so by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Now we got director questions and announcements. Are there any? Hearing none, we'll move to receive an update on Auditor Controller, Mr. Sutton.
Can you pull that microphone over a little bit?
Here it is. Hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be presenting the cash flow projections for the fourth quarter of fiscal year 17-18. Okay, so we started the fourth quarter with cash of about $4 million. And you can see the cash going up and down throughout the quarter, though we did end up better than we started and ended up with around $7 million in cash. And a lot of that's due to the timing of cash inflows and outflows. Okay, taking a look at the next graph here, this is the estimated cash flows for the beginning of fiscal year 18-19 through the end of the calendar year. So we're starting with around $7 million in cash, and we're looking at a trend that's going upward, and we should end up with around $12 million in cash. Any questions on that?
What, no questions?
No.
No questions.
Okay.
So we'll move to item 10 then. And you're still on.
Okay, item 10, I will be presenting the estimated financials through June 30th, 2018. Okay, so this is the estimated statement of net position, and I'll just go through down the statement here. So our current assets, we have cash of $6.5 million and due from other governmental units of $300K for total current assets of $6.9 million. We have non-current assets of other receivables at $970,000 and for total assets of $7.8 million here. And now our current liabilities, we have accounts payable of $3.2 million, unearned member contributions of $2.5 million, and unpaid claims of $900,000. We have non-current liabilities of $9.8 million, and that's the long-term loans from County of Fresno and County of Tulare there, and interest payable on those loans of $207,000 to date. So our total liabilities is $16.6 million.
Question.
Yes.
So we show interest of $207,000, but the number below that of non-current total liabilities is the same number as just the capital.
Oh, I didn't catch that. Okay, that should be, so about 10.1.
Oh, okay. So it's
10.1
okay.
then, so that should be corrected there. So our total liability is 16.6, so that should be up a little bit. Okay, or so our total net deficit at that point is 8.7, and so it's up by about 2.4 from the last quarter that was reported there. Okay, any questions on the net position statement?
No questions.
Okay, moving on. This here, you guys can barely see it, but this is the actuals versus budgeted for the fourth quarter of our disbursements. So we have our fixed disbursements. I can't even look at it here. I'm going to look at my paper. Okay, our fixed disbursements total $2.5 million, as opposed to the $1.9 million that was budgeted for the fourth quarter. Our claims disbursements were $17 million, and that's in line with what was budgeted at 17.8. We have our premium disbursements of $10.5 million versus the budgeted $8.9 million. And so our total disbursements for the fourth quarter were $30 million, and the budget was $28 million. And so we went over by 5% there. Now for the year in total, the disbursements were $108 million versus the budgeted $98 million. And so in total, we went over by 11% there. Okay. Any questions on that?
No questions.
Okay. And this next one here is a breakdown of the administrative costs for the fourth quarter. The total costs were $380,000, and I'll just highlight some line items here for administration. Accounting, $43,000. Human resources, $62,000. Audit fees, $22,000. Legal, $220,000. For the total year, the administrative cost totaled $1.1 million.
fees.
Any questions?
No questions.
All right, moving on to the last one here. This is the statement of cash flows per month. And each column there represents the cash flows for each of the individual months in the fiscal year 17-18. Now for the fourth quarter, so we started off the fourth quarter with $4.7 million in April, and we ended up, as of June 30th, at $6.5 million. And that, of course, ties to the statement of net position. Questions there?
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, I do have one question regarding just the bank service fees. Even though for the amount of money that's flowing through there, $13,000 doesn't sound like a whole lot. But again, those fees, are we asking the banks to do anything out of the ordinary, or is everything being done electronically and we're not spending a lot of their staff time for them to house the money?
It's being done, on their end. It's about a little over $1,000 per month for bank fees there.
But again, is it just a hosting? Is that basically just a hosting fee, or are we actually speaking to representatives of the bank on a regular basis?
On my end, I have not spoken to any representatives yet. It's just having our cash with Chase Bank and just running the reports on there. I'm not aware of any communication with representatives on my end. There may be some with our Treasury Department that may be speaking with representatives.
Okay, this is something I'm going to watch. But, obviously when we're dealing with the tens of millions of dollars that are flowing through there, typically banks would be excited about that. And as long as we're not spending a lot of their time, maybe we should have no fees. Just a thought. But that's something I'm going to watch. So at some point I might follow up with you directly and maybe have a conversation with Chase to see if we can get a better deal on those fees.
Sounds good.
Shop banks.
What's that?
Or shop banks.
Or shop banks, maybe.
Any other questions?
And that was it for the financials.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick question on the couple slides past. There was an 11-point differential between the budgeted and the actual. Is that what you mentioned?
Yes.
Can you just briefly describe that process? Are there just enough variables that it's just too difficult to keep it within that, or what explained the 11 differential?
That I would have to defer that to the staff on there. I can present the numbers as is, but in terms of the operations of why we're not on budget, I would have to defer to the operations staff for that one.
Would this be an appropriate time to have someone explain that, just briefly?
Paul Nerland, SJVIA Director. Just looking at, I think just to clarify, are you on the report line item 3 where there's an 11% variance at Chimenti and Associates?
Yes, this would be.
Yes.
To clarify. Okay. If that's the line item you're speaking to, and we'd have to confirm this with our staff, that 9 times out of 10, that is a timing issue of when the expenses hit. More than anything else, but I can ask our team if there's anything different. That's typically, when these reports are written, cash could be in the bank that has not been paid, so
it's more of a time issue than a budget issue.
More often than not, that is the case when we looked at this.
We were chuckling about Andreas Vanderpool actually asked that same question, but he asked it under his breath.
I asked it to Buddy because I expected Buddy to know, and then you had to ask the real experts.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. We'll go to item 11. Larry?
Me. Good morning, Board. Larry Gomez, County of Fresno. This item is before you today. There was a need to reschedule the December SJVIA Board meeting that's scheduled to be held here in Tulare County due to a conflict and scheduling conflict. We had hoped to have the dates finalized for you to approve today, but we are looking at December 13th, which is a Thursday, or December 14th. We have reached out to several of you already to get your schedules, but have not been able to confirm which of those 2 days. So we will bring that back to you when we can finalize that for you. But I also have another update as well. Yesterday afternoon, we received an email regarding the San Joaquin Valley Regional Association of California Counties. They have their fall conference, which this fall is scheduled for October 24th through the 26th. There is an SJVIA board meeting on Friday, the 26th of October. So we wanted to get your input on, I'm not sure which of the directors here plan on attending that, and if we need to look at possibly rescheduling the October SJVIA board meeting as well.
We just do it at the conference? Where is it this year?
It's in Stockton.
Well, actually, it completes on Thursday, doesn't it? Isn't it just Wednesday, Thursday?
Normally Friday morning is the
Friday's a
board
business
meeting.
meeting usually.
I mean, okay.
But we could do it Friday morning up there.
Up there,
Staff would love that, I think.
Stockton, beautiful downtown
Oh,
Stockton.
they said no. I can see, I'm reading their minds. They said no.
No. I heard there's a lot of cats there, so Rhonda's in.
What's the scheduling conflict with the 7th?
I'd have to go back and look. Someone was not was it Cal Pelra conference? That's
Pardon me?
The Cal Pelra conference is that.
Are you going to Cal Power Conference?
No.
Are you going to Cal Power?
Maybe.
Are you? Okay.
Well, I know December 14th, we've got a SJVWIA meeting.
Yeah, it's the water.
Yeah. So there would be a conflict on
So
December
13th would work for me.
You really only have the 13th, yeah.
So I know
I'm
there
totally
was,
free.
the only issue was whether or not this room was available, but if this room isn't available, we have other rooms.
Yeah, this room was not available on the 13th, as well as the TCERA. We could.
We can find a location though.
over at
At
HR.
HRD, we would not have the microphones, and we would tape record the meeting. We'd have to find a way to do that.
But would you want to have another meeting in Fresno?
Yeah, we can do
might
it
be
in
able to find
Fresno.
some
I mean,
space.
that's works as well. I mean, it's-
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Go
we
to
can
Why don't you
double
check
up
on, Paul?
the Larry
Check.
meetings next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we can turn around and do 2 meetings in a row until Larry.
So we have not checked availability of facilities in Fresno, but we can do that.
Well, it sounds like we need to take care of both meetings, because that is a problem on the 26th.
Yeah.
So probably need to try to schedule both meetings, reschedule them.
This might be a question of council. Can the board give broad direction today to staff to work with both calendars and facilities to come back and then post those meetings so we don't have to do it on the fly today?
Yes, they can.
So if your board would like to do that, we
Yeah.
can work with you and our staff and
Broad discretion.
Yeah, let's do that.
Limited.
Stockton it is.
I'm unlimited.
We get phone calls.
popular.
We good on that one?
I don't know if we're good, but I think we're done.
We're done, yeah.
Okay.
That was an expression. So we'll move to item 12.
Rhonda Schustrom, the SJVIA. This is a request that the board approve and authorize staff to submit the 2018 multi-county biannual notice to the Fair Political Practices Commission, indicating that we have no amendment that is required at this time. This is a compliance issue. And in our description on the agenda item, you can see staff have answered the requested information from the FPPC guidelines.
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, so we're saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carried. So we'll move to item 13, and Hollis.
Hi, good morning. Hollis McGill, Human Resources Manager. Item 13 is requesting the President to execute the Third Amendment with the County of Fresno for the cash advances. This was approved at the County of Fresno Board meeting on August 7th, and it mirrors the County of Tulsa's agreement.
So moved.
Yep, got a motion?
Second.
Second. Any public discussion? All in favor, so we're saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we'll move to item 14. And that's Borden. There you go.
There we go.
You're up for a while.
Borden Darm with Keenan and Associates. Item 14 is a request for signatures that were not executed last year by the SJVIA due to not receiving them for the Anthem HMO, which impacted 3 entities: County of Fresno, I believe it was City of Ceres, and one other city. What do you call it? Waterford, City of Waterford. Those were not given to, well, either the prior consultant had them and didn't execute them, or we just never received them. The reason this issue comes up now is Keenan requested from Anthem the year-end accounting for 2017 on the HMO. Now, you know, we discontinued it as of 1/1/18 this year, but still we're due a year-end accounting. There will be a final accounting on the HMO, but Anthem needs to allow more time for all the claims to run out. Most likely, most of them have, but we will look at a final accounting next year. In the interim, I thought it was appropriate to request the 2017 year-end accounting to see how that year ended, and they cannot provide us with that year-end accounting until the signatures are obtained. So that's why the request comes before you today.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor, so we're saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carried. Moves us to item 15.
Item 15 was a request from the board to receive an update as to how Empirics has done through the first 6 months. The report is in 2 parts. The utilization data usually takes 90 to 120 days to close. So the report from a utilization perspective is only based off first quarter of 2018. However, more of the experience data that's available, that's through June of this year as well too. From a highlight perspective, I won't go through everything, but one of the big concerns is the specialty drugs. They're at 27%, and based off of some of the more intricate data that I looked at, it appears that it's going up towards into the 30s and could potentially go even higher. So we'll be coming back to the board with recommendations and so forth relative to possibilities on handling those prescription drugs. Very specifically, if you recall, this board was very concerned about not impacting membership too much as we transition over. Well, we've transitioned over now, and so some of the edits that we have in place with how the plan is administered should be reviewed as we move forward, since everybody's kind of settled. We're still very sensitive to those that are on current medications and so forth, but moving forward, we'll be meeting with Empirics after we have the data from the second quarter, which should be in line with hopefully when we have the October board meeting. But we'll come back with some recommendations relative to that. From a performance guarantee perspective, so far it's projected that a $1.1 million savings was had on the clinical side, and that is predominantly, and there's some examples in the report relative to, sometimes our providers don't necessarily look at the price tag of what they're prescribing, and I've been very impressed with the alerts that we've been receiving relative to, hey, the doctor prescribed this drug, it had a price tag of $60,000 or whatever, and you can read in the report relative to some of those examples. But they worked, and sometimes the generic was the first step. Predominantly, there are 3 clinical programs that we're looking at. 1 is prior authorization for medication, 2 is quantity limits, and the third one is prior authorization, quantity, step therapy. Thank you. So those are the areas that are predominantly looked at, and we want to make sure that we have compliance relative to it. I believe early on, this year. We did have a few hiccups here and there, and we had some member outreach issues, but I believe overall the plan is running much better. If you recall, when Empirics was put in place, there was a performance guarantee on the clinical standards of $1,850,000, which was the floor, and $2,250,000, which was the ceiling, and a lot of it was based on what controls and edits we put in place. In my discussion, and based off of what was saved so far at the 1.1, Empirics feels very confident not only that they will achieve the floor, but also the ceiling for this plan year. So we still have 3 quarters to report relative to that, and we'll keep you abreast relative to that. The other request that was made, and it is not really included in this report, you have the data, but we want what we're going to come back in October is show you the year over year. So from 2017 to 2018 through June of both years, what the differences are relative to performance. We are paying more for claims. However, we're also seeing greater utilization by membership, and specifically greater utilization in specialty drugs. And that's why we've got to get a hold of that and do our best to control those as well too. Because we saw, just on a preliminary basis, we don't have everything back, but I can share you, we had a 47% increase in specialty drug usage for one county over the first 7 months of this year, and a 15% increase in cost as well too, predominantly due to the specialty drugs. So that's the part that we got to get under control.
Is there a particular drug? I'm just thinking about advertising. I know people there'll be advertising on television. You need this, and then if people go into the doctor and say, "I want that," and oftentimes that's going to be a high-priced drug.
That's a big issue. Those advertisements always conclude with, "Ask your doctor if this prescription is right for you," and it's effective. And here's where things have changed. It used to be that advertisement for prescription drugs, those drugs that were advertised were high-cost drugs in kind of the $200 to $500 range. Now it's those drugs that are advertised are typically in the $2,000 to $5,000 and way above. Those are the ones that are being advertised now. And, a lot of it...
It's being effective.
It is. And it's in 2010 when the ACA came out, any type of limit that a plan could have relative to plan maxes, lifetime max. We used to see plans with $1 million, $2 million. Right. Those were taken away. They're all unlimited. And at that time, everybody was fantastic. I cannot outlive how much my health insurance is going to cover, which is a wonderful thing. But in the same token, you have the other side, where all of a sudden people are going, well, they can't limit what they pay. And so you see, especially it's obvious in the prescription drugs that I don't think the highest cost drug that I saw so far is a $1.2 million drug. And, prior to 2010, there's no way that has that price tag because a lot of plans have that much to pay. But we've seen that now. And it's a response to the ACA. And I think what we're doing is trying to control that as best we can.
That concept works great until you run out of other people's money.
Board and I was the one that requested this item at a previous meeting, and one of the things that I didn't see included in the report was a comparison to projection. So this board made a decision to select MPRX, or however you pronounce it, based upon projections, and we did not choose other companies because of that. And I would just like to compare actual costs or projected, actual costs or experience to what the projections were based on that time to kind of check what our decision making was.
We'll come back. We'll come back and we'll give you a full report. And that report will, first of all, include year over year, 17 to 18. And it'll be for the first 6 months. And then we'll look 18 to what was projected. And then also show you what's projected for 19. Okay. Just so that you have an overall view of where we believe things are going. And from there, make a determination. And we'll have some comments relative to it because based on the increased specialty drug utilization,
Kind of throws everything off.
it throws a monkey wrench in there.
But I'm still curious to see those numbers.
Definitely, we'll provide that in full detail to you.
And you said you were going to provide that at the October meeting?
Yes, because there it's going to be more meaningful too, because we'll have 2 quarters of utilization data, where right now I'm giving you data from January to March.
Chairman, I did a question. You do show on one of your slides on page 7 that the clinical savings guarantee was 1.8 million.
Yes.
And that the estimated clinical savings as of March 31 was 1.1. Was that just for that quarter, or was that projected out for the full year?
So the 1.8 is the floor for the full year. The 1.1 is just the first quarter.
Okay, so there tells you right there we're doing well.
Well, I just want to see the comparison
Yeah.
and all the different vendors.
It's a very fair request, and we'll bring that back.
Thank you.
Can I make a request in that regard? There's a number of potential savings opportunities that you always run up on the issue of member disruption. You know, if you do this, members have to jump through more hoops to get their prescriptions. And that's always a difficult decision, and one that I don't really think staff wants resting. We'd like you to know about those and say, you know, if we did certain options, it could provide additional savings, but there's a give and take on how much we want to do that. That might be another component.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point, but I mean, I would rather have somebody jump through a lot of hoops if their drug costs $1.1 million, but that's just my perspective.
Well, and to that end also, I mean, when you're looking, if you look at our own record as compared to let's say, you know, some sort of national average, and if we're really high, then it'd be appropriate for us to make people jump through more hoops, because I mean, we need to get in line with everybody else. If we're way above everybody else, then we need to do more, and our employees need to understand, you know, this cost is just a reflection of what you're spending. And if we can do more to keep this cost down, that keeps your premiums down. And so it all works together. But I mean, we can't. If it makes people uncomfortable, I'm sorry. But if your rates are if they're way above the national averages, then it requires us to take action. That's being good stewards. So.
Well, and another comment just on the generic drugs and some of the specialty drug use increasing. Or being prescribed by doctors. One comment that I would have is where there is a generic alternative, if a name brand prescription is being prescribed, that the doctor give justification for that. And many times there is justification. Maybe there's the patient has some type of allergy to the generic, but to the name brand drug, it's the only one that's going to work. But just require that the doctor provide that explanation, so it gives us some justification for paying that higher cost.
Thank you. We do have a high generic utilization. It actually went up about a point so far this year. We will continue on that vein, and you can see a lot of the clinical savings are like, you know, you're prescribing a specialty drug off the bat, and here's a generic that you should try. I think one of the big ones is, diabetes medication is quite prevalent in the media, and metformin, the generic, is kind of the first line of defense. And I think sometimes when we see new users, the doctor's still giving them a specialty drug when there should be either a step therapy or a promotion of the generic at first. So
maybe the drug company bought the doctor a bunch of lunches. So
there are pharmaceutical sales in this area that I know, as with the rest of the state. So
beware of drug pushers.
Yeah. We'll also be in conjunction with the October meeting, and we do have in the audience today Empirics as well as Keenan's Pharmacy Division representation. So I've already made the request for them to give us their recommendations as to how everything was implemented, based off of, not causing too much disruption to the membership, to what recommendations they would have, how that would perhaps even impact those existing members. I'm hoping that number's close to zero, but come back with some recommendations as well too that we can look, and that we don't have to do on a renewal. We could still look to do something like that for a 1-1. Okay.
That it for 15? Okay, so go ahead and move to 16.
All right. So, item 16 is the experience report, and we're, after the month of June closed, we're sitting just over $3 million in a reserve position. There's when we initially received the June data, we noticed that a part of the report was really light. And if you recall, back in when I gave you at the last board meeting, when I gave the May report, I showed you a $3.4 million, or just under $3.4 million. June was a $600,000, or just below that, a surplus month. So 3.4 plus 6 does not equal 3; it equals $4 million. But we noticed that in the reporting that the reports that we received from Anthem didn't look right on specifically the high deductible health plan, County of Fresno, that claims were that low. So when we inquired, it turns out that several groupings within the high deductible health plan were excluded. And those exclusions, we did an audit on the experience reports all the way back to January 1st of 2016 to see if there were any other understatements of claims. Through June 30th of 2017, everything was fine. Starting July of 2017 through May of 2018, the high deductible health plan for County of Fresno had been understated. And there's a report in this experience report that shows the reconciliation. The total amount was about $965,000, of which $900,000 really occurred from January 1 through May of this year as being understated. So with that, we have to accept that those claims occurred, and so there's a restatement of, or a correct statement of past months in the June reports that we gave you.
Now, Board, a quick question.
Sure.
So individuals in Fresno who have the high deductible health plan are relatively low. So this tells me that there were major events that took place with that small grouping of individuals that have that high deductible health plan. Is that correct?
Yeah, there was definitely some large claim activity, not that didn't exceed the reinsurance threshold, but did have a significant impact. For instance, on the restatement, March of 2018 shows a significant deficit position specifically. So last month when I presented the preliminary renewals, it was based off of understating the high deductible health plan by just under $1 million. The final renewal that you have before you takes all that into consideration. But if you also look at it from the perspective of a high deductible health plan, the PPO came in at a negative renewal in minus 20 something. Well, it wasn't minus 20, it was more like minus 17. So net, the renewal over renewal didn't really have an impact, but obviously we have to disclose to you the updated and corrected claims data.
What would be the strategy from the health provider in this case to withhold or not be aware of the actual activity that took place? It kind of seems unusual for us to have to do the investigating.
Yeah.
So are they, by doing that, does it, because they weren't underpaid. We paid them, but were they trying to, in some way, was some of those costs buried?
Definitely
in the
not.
EPO?
To the best of what I can tell, and we do have Anthem here today as well, if you'd like to ask any questions of them. But to me, somehow some group numbers got switched off. Once in June, or after the month of June 2017 was closed, and then because it was less than $100,000 over 6 months, and then almost $900,000 over the next 5 months, I got to believe that some other group numbers that accumulate into that report got switched off as well on January 1 of this year. So I don't think there was anything underhanded or relative to Anthem's behavior. It was a mistake that was made and has now been corrected. Okay. So on an overall basis, we're at a little over $3 million. In a later agenda item, I'm going to give you an update as to where we are relative to where we thought we would be. That $3 million is actually ahead of schedule relative to where we thought we would be. So, would have rather had 4 though. Any questions on the experience reports? Does anybody want me? Okay.
No questions.
Okay.
You ready for the next item?
Yes.
I'm ready.
Okay. All right. Item 17 will be short and sweet. Once a year, we like to give an actuarial certification of where the IBNR should be. The first time we did it with a January 1, December 31st, 2016 valuation date. And that's because we came on in March of that year, and we wanted to give you kind of actuarially where we felt the IBNR reserve should be. In discussion with you having a fiscal year that ends June 30th, and in working with your auditor's department to make sure we understand where IBNR is and so forth, it just seemed prudent to not do the actuarial certification for a December 30th date, which just represents the close of the plan year, but rather have it align so that you have a letter that's actuarially certified for June 30th that says what that reserve should be. So these are the updated reserves for both the County of Tulare and for County of Fresno. For the City of Marysville, which is the third entity, they're too small to do an actuarial certification, but there is a request to reserve approximately $130,000 relative to IBNR. I will say this, that these IBNR certified numbers are what we used in the basis of the 2019 renewal, in the final renewal, because we had them available.
Okay, we're ready to go to 18.
This is an update on our IBNR and reserve stabilization reserves. And so I'm actually going to use this one. Page 2. Page 2 shows the 2018 funding requirements as were previously shown. That number in the bottom, on that top box, that to the bottom right corner of $20,792,000 should look familiar to you. And then we look at what's required for 2019. So it takes into consideration the 2019 renewal. You can see that loan repayment has not been changed. Based off the auditor's report today, I do know that my interest number is only through March of this year, so we'll give an updated interest number on the loan repayment through the end of this year, or at the end of this year. The required IBNR from 18 to 19 went up from $5.7 million to $5.8 million, a $98,000 difference. So that's an increased liability that we would have, or that the plan would have. And then the required stabilization, if you recall, we're trying to reserve 1 month of claim activity. And so obviously the projection for claims went up, therefore the amount that we have to reserve in stabilization, it goes up as well too. That'll happen on an annualized basis as we do the renewal, or it'll adjust, I should say. It won't necessarily go up, but it will adjust. And so that adjusted to the tune of about $384,000. So that at this point, the calculation that we show is that it went from 20.8 million to 21.3 million, roughly, in that. I did want to share also the final page of this report with you, because I think it shows some good news. know how to use this. I just clicked it. That didn't do anything. Just go to page 5. Oh, okay, like that. This is a new exhibit. No. Sorry, page 4. Page 4, this longer one with print. What I thought important is to give you a budget of how we're accumulating. So this is based off of renewal decisions and so forth, and then show you how we're actually doing. So I have 2018, and I show actuals, which obviously the auditor would need to validate as well too, but based off of what we were looking at, the experience reports and so forth, the 2018 budget, we showed that medical plan experience, we included a stabilization reserve buildup in there, and a component for IBNR. On the year, we were trying to get to $2.8 million, $2,881,000. Well, through 6 months, we're at $3,012,000, and we still have 6 months to go. Haven't seen July's report yet, but I hear that's not a good one. But you know, things go up, things go down, and hopefully we'll head in the right direction. So we have an opportunity, depending on how claims fall, to really build and surpass what was actually budgeted on the year. We are anticipating from the Kaiser rate surcharge that we have in place about $1.1 million. So far, we're at $577,000, and that's just automatically built into the rates. So that will continue, and there's nothing going to stop that. So we'll hit that target as well too, as well as let's see. Well, we took the Delta Dental Premium Holiday of $362. That was a transfer from their premium stabilization reserve that occurred in January. We don't anticipate another one during the course of the year. And then there's the 2% on the Delta Dental rate. That's the subsidy that we're taking out of the PSR as well too, which that won't change as well too. So the rest of the monies on the other than the medical plan experience, those are pretty much coming in as the entities pay their premiums. We'll be collecting those. So we will be well ahead of target for 2018. And then for 2019, you can see we'll still have the plan experience where I'm showing you what IBNR and stabilization combined, what we have built in. It's roughly about $273,000 a month is what we anticipate, coming up to a total on the year of 3.2. Kaiser, we are recommending that there be a rate surcharge entered there as well again in the renewal. That'll be $719,000. And then the run out of the Delta Dental PSR, if this board decides to move to a self-funded environment, will realize a transfer of the Delta Dental PSR, and that's about $655,000. So hopefully by the end of 2019, we will be sitting, basically around $8.6 million towards the $21 million position that we're trying to fund. So,
are you going to go over page 5?
Yeah, page 5 has been in other reports as well too, and this shows the from inception through the end of 2017. We'll update for 2018 once the year closes, or unless you want to see a mid-year adjustment.
I don't need
but the intent was to and what it is to kind of go back to inception to see, okay, where'd the money flow and so on and so forth. So relative to the position that we have right now. As you can see, now I'll just focus on the bottom line. The 2010 through 2017 shows here's premium we collected, here's the total cost of the plan, and then there's a lot of adjustments. Those adjustments include the HMO year-end accounting, where we get either, most likely we received refunds, so you have to add that to the equation. Prescription drug rebates, And so we subtotaled that. And then again, keep in mind that the all other deficit position, which I will tell you is predominantly from the County of Sutter, that needs to be reallocated among the three entities that are still there, because we can't go back after them. So the second to bottom line, where it says AO reallocation, that's the all other reallocation of $2,179,000, and that would be 1.2 to County of Fresno, County of Tulare, $858,000, and $52,000 to the City of Marysville. So that brings us to a total position of where I see that the plan is the SJVIA is in an overall deficit position of $7,232,000. And you see there the different buckets. County of Fresno at 7.6 to the negative, County of Tulare at 422,000 to the positive, and all other 52,000 to the negative as well. This does not include the only additional liability that it wouldn't include is the IBNR. So it doesn't necessarily say that IBNR is funded for all entities as well. This is just a historical perspective of basically all the costs, all the adjustments versus the premium.
Yeah, I just found this chart to be very helpful. Shows since inception and various strategies that were undertaken by this board through guidance of different individuals, and it's pretty clear that the adding of entities, as we did in our history, wasn't the smartest thing in the world, as that ended up being a loser for us and costing us quite a bit of money. But at the same time, I think that this also shows as well, as we look to build IBNR or build reserves, and how we allocate the percentages that are going to be added to respective entities. I think that we need to be considerate of these numbers and making sure that we distribute fairly as we go forward.
I would agree with that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
So I think overall, very positive news relative to this plan year, and what, if recommendations are followed for the following plan year, relative to the position that we're taking on. And I think most importantly, in my opinion, I don't think we've overburdened any of the employee populations over this year nor next year. I mean, individuals will disagree with me relative to those that are covered under the plan, but on an overall basis, for the betterment of the SJVIA and its membership, I feel we've been prudent without being overburdened.
Ready to move to 19 then?
Mm-hmm. I am. All right. So this is the 2019 renewal. That is considered the final renewal. The board asked me to come back with various different options, which we have. There is a staff recommendation, and then there's an adjustment as well that merits some discussion. So I'll start with the medical plan. In that, the board, well, there were 4 options that were identified to come back with. One was just what does the underwriting, pure and simple by itself, merit? So we came back with that option. 2, because there were negative amounts in that pure underwriting, what if we took those negative amounts and made them at 0, like you had done last year as well too? Then 3 was what if we go ahead and still anything that's negative we put to 0, but yet because that predominantly impacted City of Marysville and the County of Fresno, rather than simply increasing the total renewal for the County of Fresno, offsetting the negative which was in the PPO in the high deductible health plan, offset when we move it to 0 to the EPO plan and bringing that down. And then finally, the 4th one was not only offsetting, but have a common renewal for the EPO and the high deductible health plan and the PPO for the county of Fresno. And for the city of Marysville, rather than passing on a 0, do the average for the entire group. And the only reason I say that, their experience is not credible at all. I would say if there was even one large claim that would have hit even $200,000 for the city of Marysville, not even the reinsurance level, the renewal would look substantially different. And most likely they'd be looking for an exiting strategy. And so even a 0 I don't think would be fair given the circumstance, but the overall average for what the self-funded program is, I felt was very fair. And so the recommendation there was that, and that's option 4, and that's what was requested. In the executive summary, what we've done here is we've shown you option 4, and then let me discuss Kaiser. If you recall, last year we were put in a position where Kaiser gave us a negative renewal increases, and this board prudently said, we'll take that, but we're going to keep the SJVIA rates at 0 so that we could, and that's what built that $1.1 million reserve this year, or is building. So this year, after further negotiations with Kaiser, the renewal came in at about a 4.8%. It varied among the entities slightly, but brought the county of Fresno to a plus 0.7%, so less than 1% increase from what the members had seen before, from 0. And it held the county of Tulare still in a negative position at less than 1% negative, and also the same was pretty much true for the county of, or the city of Marysville. But that excluded any type of margin. Keenan, in conjunction with staff, had discussion relative to, do we continue to put a margin application on Kaiser to build back the reserves that are so desperately needed? And we showed a variety of different scenarios with loads between what was before $10. A $10 surcharge is equivalent to about 1.1% load. And then we showed 0 all the way to 5% in 1% increments. And the decision, based off where the Anthem plans were falling relative to their renewals, the decision was made to recommend a 3% load to the Kaiser. So that's where you get to 3.07 for Kaiser, for County of Fresno, 2.18 for the County of Tulare, and 2.95 for the City of Marysville. On the dental, on a fully insured basis, you're going to be in the second year of a 2-year rate guarantee, so there's no changes in the rates. However, the recommendation is not to accept a fully insured option. In past discussions with this board, I've explained that they're holding a PSR, which they've transferred some funds back. We believe there'll be $600,000 to $700,000 left in that. Technically and contractually, that's Delta Dental's money. So anytime there's excess at the end of the year, they keep it, it's theirs. They've agreed if we self-fund because, one, I met with them, negotiated with them. They're very mindful relative to the overall position. They said, if you self-fund, what we will do is we will take that PSR reserve, and rather than you paying claims out of it, we will pay ourselves the claims until that PSR fund is basically goes down to 0 value, and then at that point you would start. And so what that would mean was be a transfer of the PSR from Delta Dental to the SJVIA. So the recommendation, and we would not adjust the rates, we would keep them at 0. The recommendation is that we do move to a self-funded program on that. We will be building IBNR in that program. There is stabilization built into it too. So we would look to basically self-fund it so that we could transfer that money over, and that was part of the, if you remember from the budget for next year, that was included in there as well too. The vision is on a fully insured basis, and the vision is also in a rate guarantee, so we don't recommend self-funding the vision simply because the advantage of doing it is so minor that it's just simply not worth it. If we saw a significant rate adjustment, we could perhaps validate that, but not at this point. So the recommendation is to go with a 0% and stay fully insured there. Those are what the renewal recommendations coming from the staff were. And then there's one adjustment and request from the County of Fresno, and that is relative, and there's no documentation relative to it, but I'll draw your attention to this, to the first two line items under the County of Fresno. Passing on a 3% increase on Kaiser and basically more than 3% higher to the self-funded plan widens the gap on the contribution side to the point where migration would be entered into, where people would leave the self-funded plans, predominantly the EPO plan, and move and migrate towards Kaiser. We've seen a significant shift to the point where I believe 4 or 5 years ago, Kaiser had, I don't have that in front of me, but I think it's like 4 or 5%. Yeah, had a 5% participation, and now they're up to 35% prior to the 2019 renewal. I know that one of the things that I will be doing a study, because there's been a lot of talk, Kaiser's taking on the best risk. If you talk to Kaiser, Kaiser says, no, our risk is no different than yours on the self-funded plan. So we will be doing a study comparing the self-funded plan compared to the Kaiser for the SJVIA, just to make sure that we know exactly, is the better risk going there, or is it indifferent, or what the situation is. But the request has been made to avoid further migration to the Kaiser plan by doing a common renewal increase for the County of Fresno. And what that means is basically if you add for 2018 the first two lines together, 2019 the first two lines together, what is the common percentage difference from 18 to 19? And it works out to be 5.5%. And so that is a further consideration that the County of Fresno would like this board to consider as well. And this all came up really this week when we gave into consideration what 3.07 and 6.54 could potentially mean relative to migration.
Is that a responsible thing to do, though? Has that been fully analyzed? It just came up this week, and it's put before the board, and it's not even been in our material.
Right.
I don't want to speak on behalf of Fresno County, but I just want to make sure that's a fully analyzed scenario before this board goes and votes for it.
I think our council has some concerns still, do they not?
I would like to weigh in and advise that I just became aware of this last night at 4:30 when Mr. Nerlin called and reported that this request was going to be made. We have not received any written data that would show the impacts so that we could make a prudent decision in terms of whether there is financial impacts, and we would request that we would have time that the entire SJVIA staff, professional staff, and legal counsel and our auditors would have the time to review that information prior to making any action or decision today on that matter.
Well, Rhonda, would you be comfortable with it if this board made a decision today, but we also included in that motion that there would be no impact? Because obviously this board has made clear that we want to make sure that Tulare and Fresno counties and other members pay their own ways to the fullest extent possible. So if we did choose to move and that was part of the motion, would that provide you with enough comfort, or are you because my concern is the longer we wait, it could cause some challenges for us. I know we're already looking at having some special meetings at some point later on this year, and I would imagine that, Paul, you need to answer this question. You would like to have a decision on this or flexibility sooner rather than later. And furthermore, when did you find out about this even being a possibility?
I found out about this last night at 4:30, and unfortunately, we had our health plan advisory group yesterday, so we were not able to take any of this information and share it with our health plan advisory group as well.
And what I'm hearing from you, Rhonda, is your greatest concern is that somehow it's going to negatively impact Tulare County, which is not what Fresno County wants. So if there's a way that we can incorporate that into a motion, would you be supportive of it?
I would not want to see a negative impact, but I also believe that this is part of due diligence and prudent practices, that we have the information to review as the SJVIA, and that we do this together, which is what the SJVIA was formed, and what benefits everyone in the SJVIA.
That's the part I'm having a hard time understanding, quite frankly. And go ahead, Council, weigh in. What is the issue? We have a balanced plan at 3%. If Fresno County, to our own plan, wants to increase that by 2%, it's simply going to strengthen the bottom line and add to what we've already been doing this year. So I'm sitting here, quite frankly, amazed as what is the issue when the plan balances at 3 and we're going to add 2 more to that to strengthen it. What's the problem?
Is that the SJVIA has not done their due diligence on this.
How do you say that when it's already done its due diligence and came out at 3%? So to raise that, it's only going to increase and add to the benefit, not detract in any way. So how can you make that statement?
For the past number of months, when this has all been discussed in the preliminary rate renewals, this has never been brought up once. Never. But it only comes up the day before, which is why
we just knew about it this week, though.
It's in the best interest of you as board members to do your due diligence, since you are the board members of this agency, to then table this and then take a special meeting later. So that way you could actually make an informed decision.
And I don't want to table the entire rate renewal because you take in another month of plan experience, and that one other month of plan experience is going to could potentially affect this in a very negative way.
If I can speak to that, I haven't spoken yet. How did this come up? What's the history, and what is the due diligence? Just to make sure we have the whole story. I think it should have come up sooner. I like to give credit to Hollis McGill, who's the benefits manager at Fresno County, for raising the issue. As this board recalls, in March of 2016, we hired Aon. We asked them to do a study of what our practices had been and what they recommended. They gave us a report, and they raised this issue. This issue was we're seeing a migration from the Kaiser plans. They were concerned, and at that time, the migration was not nearly what it is today. And so, frankly, I wish it would come up. How did it come up? Hollis took the proposed rates that had been calculated for today's meeting and indicated how will this impact Fresno County. In looking at that, the rates between the employee-only plan for Kaiser and the employee-only plan for the EPO would be about a $30 difference. So we're now increasing the difference. So last year we had about 200 more without any more difference. Left the self-funded risk pool that we oversee here and moved to the Kaiser plan. So the Aon report, Keenan, when they were hired, recommended this. Frankly, it should have come up sooner. But it's prudent. To ignore it is not an option, and I strongly recommend against. This is prudent action. It's action that considers what's been happening. Keep in mind that of those that left the self-insured pool and went to Kaiser, they contributed to the very deficits that we are now recovering. So that pool is also contributing to paying that back by increasing that margin by 2.5% more. So the premium to the SJVIA is the same. So to say there's been no due diligence, to say this hasn't been considered, is not accurate. And with respect to counsel, I say this with respect, I think our consultant and our underwriters are the ones who give us the advice as to what our rate should be and how we should do this. Frankly, I would like this to come up sooner.
With all due
What is
respect to you as-
procedurally?
Excuse me?
Just quick, procedurally, if we were to move forward with this today, when would it go into effect?
This is for plan year 2019. So this would be in the open enrollment rates that we would be going back to the County of Fresno Board in September.
So I guess I'm wondering, in theory, if we were to move forward with this today, is it irreversible if we were to find out through enhanced due diligence for us to undo this this movement in time to reverse course?
No, we would have to have a special meeting of this board to.
I mean, at the next. When is the next meeting?
Well, that's
October.
to be determined, but
All right.
in October.
Let's
so.
assume if we were to move forward today, and then we were to find out that there was a rock that wasn't turned over to someone's detriment, although no one here can contemplate how that might actually exist, could we recover and undo what would be done?
We would have to have a special meeting of this board
in October,
probably sooner than October, because I think to Larry's
You'd
open
have to do it in September.
It would need to be early September, probably.
So, and real quick, first of all, I just want to give a compliment. I really do appreciate the senatorial vocabulary over there. I mean, it's kind of interesting to hear how senators speak. It kind of raises the bar at the SJVIA and the Board of Supervisors. But that being said, I have no issue with allowing the County of Fresno to do what they see prudent, and that's going to further enhance the premium contribution and reduce the migration of, call it the good lives, over to a pool that isn't necessarily funding as much. But one of my bigger concerns is comparing on page 5 the EPO to the high deductible health plan in Fresno County. We created this EPO this year, I believe, right? It was this year, or was it last year?
Yes.
I don't remember.
Yeah, this year.
And this was supposed to be, call it a hybrid between an HMO and a
It was to
PPO
replace it,
type thing. And it was supposed to be, really a saver. Well, clearly it's a 12% cost driver. And then that's being offset with your high deductible health plan folks who appeared to have a pretty healthy year. And so the balance there isn't really fairly allocated, I don't think, but it really brings up the question as to, should we even continue this EPO option? Have you done a thorough evaluation of that? And was this smart to even create in the first place? So I just say that really kind of, that question's in my mind.
I can address that issue. Relative to the EPO, first of all, we underwrite off of 12 months. We only have 6 months of EPO experience. So we had to take the HMO, the experience there, and do some conversions and be very conservative with those conversions. So we really don't have 12 months. If you were to ask me, do we have credible, or I'm saying our costs are coming in 12% higher next year, I don't have full faith in that number. We need 12 months of EPO experience. And at that point, when we underwrite it and it says 12% increase, then we missed the mark.
Good point. Thank you.
And I did want to also just real quick make a comment to the EPO relative to, for 2018, we show a very small reserve buildup, but keep in mind that it went into effect December 18th of 2017, and we had over an $800,000 buildup there. So when you look at the experience reports and so forth, it really makes more sense to look at since inception. And there you see it's actually over $1 million to the good. It's just that part of that we're counting in 17 still.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to say that it seems like it's prudent what the County of Fresno is recommending to do here, and it seemed like it would be beneficial to the entire organization because, again, it's not just about whether or not they're healthy people leaving to go to to Kaiser. It's just that the numbers going, because again, we look to the numbers to help repay back the debt that we incurred for these employees over time. So stemming that flow is beneficial to the organization. I realize this is not the best way to do something, and it would be better to have spent more time and been able to advertise the change that you were going to do so that the employees would know about it and so forth and so on. But if there's no if we're not violating any of our own policies or laws to do this, I would certainly support Fresno County's position to move forward with this. So I've heard council say that there's concern about due diligence, and it would have been nice if we had spent more time reviewing this and analyzing it and so forth. But I'm prepared to go today unless there's some hard and fast reason why we're not able to do it today. And I haven't heard anything to that end as of.
Well, and I think even from a logistical standpoint, even if theoretically we wanted to delay this issue, I don't know that we would be able to meet in the time frame to even do that. It's really, I think the decision needs to be made today. And I think I've heard enough where I feel comfortable with supporting Fresno County's position.
Could I ask the consultant to weigh in on, has this latest option flown to Kaiser? Because obviously Kaiser has to agree and be willing to agree to our proposal.
Thank you, Rhonda. Yes, it's been a fast-paced week for myself. Tuesday in the afternoon, it was presented to Kaiser. I heard back from Kaiser with an acceptance that they would be willing to do that on Wednesday evening. So they've agreed to the 5.5. Point of clarification: even though Kaiser's going up, the self-funded plan comes down, so it's a wash. So there's no greater revenue coming to the SJVIA as well.
Thank you.
Where do we go from here?
Do we need a separate motion for that?
You just need a motion explaining which plans or which renewal percentages you're going to select.
If you'd like, I can review the renewal recommendation from staff with the discussion that we just had for County of Fresno. And I'll stick to this chart here. So for the County of Fresno, the recommendation is that Anthem and Kaiser receive a common renewal increase at 5.5%. That Kaiser and that include a 3% margin relative to the Kaiser rates as well too. That the dental remain at the current rates at 2018. However, that we move to a self-funded model. Vision, that we accept the renewal at 0. The recommendation for the County of Tulare for dental and vision is the same at 0s, and that the Anthem self-funded plan renew at 2.35%, and that Kaiser renew at 2.18%, also including a 3% margin. And that for the City of Marysville, that they receive a 4.91% increase on the Anthem plan, and Kaiser a 2.95, which also includes 3% margin.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Steve. Any public conversation on this? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, pass unanimously. So,
Real quick, Borden, just before we continue, what's the trend this year in the marketplace for health plan increases?
Thank you. I'm glad you asked that. Typically, self-funded plans target 6 to 8%, and the fully insured are typically a little bit higher than that. Usually starts in the 8 to 10% range. So we are staying below trend, and we're at the low end of self-funded plans in general as well too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Borden. You make watching paint dry interesting.
Thank you for that compliment.
And that's a good thing.
Move to item 20, Rhonda.
This is a request from the city of Marysville to ask the SJVIA to extend the termination notice from 90 days to 120 days to allow time for Marysville to review our rate action that was just adopted today. We have historically allowed non-founding members. We have extended the timeframes for them in the past. The staff would be supportive of going ahead and extending to 120 days.
So moved.
Got a motion?
Second. Thanks for seconding that non-controversial item there, correct? Not controversial for
Any
me.
public comment?
Excuse me, hi. Actually, reducing it from 120 to 90 days.
Yes, the other way
I believe,
around.
is the
Okay,
clarification.
we're good.
Correct. I'm sorry. I said that wrong.
No public comment?
Shorten time.
Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. And now my favorite item, adjournment.
10 to go.